everyone, and welcome to this explainer on the Foundry brought to you by Forge College. Today, we're diving straight into architecture patterns and integration. Now, if you caught our last lesson, designing the account abstraction layer, you'll remember we mapped out all the abstract pieces of a smart wallet. But, abstract pieces don't exactly execute transactions on their own, right? So today's goal is super practical. We're going to wire all those abstract pieces together into a living, breathing, functional blueprint. Because the last thing we want is for your decentralized app to just collapse under its own weight on launch day. We are taking all that brilliant theory and we're turning it into rock-solid code.
Okay, let's dive into this and take a quick look at the agenda. First up, the blueprint. Second, the 4 core interfaces. Third, architecture patterns. Fourth, safe upgrades. And finally, we'll wrap up in the control room.
Starting us off with section 1, the blueprint. Let's talk about smart wallet assembly.
So I want you to picture a smart wallet, exactly like an automated factory assembly line. A user walks in with a really abstract desire, right? Something like, hey, I want to swap this token for that token. Well, the factory's entire job is to transform that abstract desire into a concrete, on-chain action, preferably without the factory exploding in the process. And that brings us to our first major definition, the transaction intent. Think of this as the initial work order for our factory. It's a normalized user action that packs in the action type, the exact parameters, and some essential gas hints. The crucial part here, this is created by the user on their local device, way before any heavy machinery or, incredibly expensive blockchain nodes get involved. By normalizing this data right out of the gate, we're saving processing time and avoiding gas fees on failed logic. Literally, if the work order is flawed, we catch it before it costs the user a single dime. Catching these errors on the client side, that's a real game changer for how scalable your app becomes.
Moving right along to section 2, core integration interfaces. Let's step on to the assembly line. All right, now that we've got our work order in hand, let's actually step onto that virtual factory floor. Here's how the assembly line flows, step by step. Station 1, the client prepares the intent, writing up that initial work order we just talked about. Then it moves to Station 2, where the abstraction layer authorizes it. This is where your security rules live, so if the user doesn't have permission or maybe their cryptographic signature is just invalid, the order gets shredded right here. Safe, cheap, done. If it passes, we hit Station 3. The builder boxes it up into a raw transaction. It estimates gas, handles nonces, and basically deals with all those tedious mechanics so the user doesn't have to stress about replacing dropped transactions or calculating base fees. And finally, Station 4, the relayer submits it. This is essentially driving the delivery truck to the blockchain network to be mined. And the beauty here is, if any single station fails, the whole process just halts cleanly, rather than causing some massive, expensive traffic jam on chain. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what happens when we map these components to their primary interfaces and the exact data they exchange. Look at this beautiful structure that emerges. You've got the client SDK strictly talking to prepare intent, the auth service strictly handles authorize, the builder manages build transaction, and the relayer handles the submit function. As a developer, mapping these code-level contracts out this explicitly from day one, that is exactly how you prevent those massive, tear-your-hair-out integration headaches down the road. It keeps your architectural boundaries crystal clear, meaning a bug in your builder won't accidentally compromise your auth service. Plus, it makes sure every team member knows exactly where one piece of logic ends and the next begins. That dramatically speeds up debugging and keeps the whole platform rock solid.
Which brings us to section 3, architecture patterns. Let's look at some factory layouts.
Just like a physical factory, your assembly line can be arranged into totally different layouts depending on your specific operational needs. Because let's be real, there is absolutely no one-size-fits-all in Web3. The 3 main layouts you're going to see out in the wild are embedded wallet logic, layered wallet service, and gateway composition. Now, each of these tackles the exact same fundamental problem, but they place those 4 stations we just looked at in different digital locations based on your trust assumptions. And hey, just a quick side note, exploring the deep technical trade-offs of these specific system designs is a core part of the programming courses over at Forge College. So definitely keep that in mind when you're ready to get your hands dirty with the actual underlying code. To give you a super clear idea of the trade-offs here, let's compare embedded logic with a layered service. Embedded logic tightly couples everything right there on the local client application. And honestly, it's great for getting started quickly. It keeps things incredibly simple at first, but it's kind of like cramming all your factory workers into one tiny, totally unmonitored room. I mean, chaos is pretty much inevitable once you start scaling up your user base. A layered service, on the flip side, deliberately separates the client from the server.
By putting those heavy policy checks safely on a backend server, you're creating a trusted environment. You can actively monitor for malicious activity, you can update security rules on the fly, and you can do it all without exposing your core business logic to the highly vulnerable client side. All right, moving to section 4, safe upgrades. Let's talk about migrating safely without breaking everything. So eventually, your app is going to grow, and you are going to need to upgrade your factory's layout. And the terrifying reality? You often have to do this while the assembly line is still running, live transactions. If you're moving from, say, an embedded wallet to a layered one, you really want to follow these steps strictly. Step 1, identify your existing contracts and how they're currently wired together. Step 2, introduce the new server authorization incrementally, running it alongside the old system. Step 3, and this is literally absolutely crucial, move your signing strategy last. If you migrate signing keys before the new authorization logic is fully tested and verified, you can actually lock users out of their assets entirely, resulting in catastrophic, irreversible breakages. And yeah, nobody wants to be the developer who accidentally freezes thousands of user accounts. Finally, step 4, always plan your rollbacks before you begin pushing changes. Now, as part of that upgrade, you have to make a fundamental choice about extensibility. Basically, how are you going to add new rules to your growing factory? Well, you could use plugin-based policies. These are highly expressive, they let you do almost anything you can imagine in code, but they are incredibly complex and they heavily increase your smart contract's attack surface. Your other option? Declarative policies. Think simple JSON or YAML rules. They're safe, they're super quick to deploy, and honestly, they're just so much easier to audit. For a robust factory, a hybrid approach is usually the sweet spot. You rely on the simple declarative rules for like 90% of your basics, and you only break out those complex plugins for the really heavy-duty, highly specific custom logic that fundamentally changes the core functionality. And finally, section 5, the control room. Let's look into observability. Okay, so you've built the factory, you've upgraded the layout, but now you need observability to ensure your transactions don't just vanish into the cold, dark crypto void without a trace. Trust me, literally nothing is worse for a developer than a transaction that simply disappears without logging an error. This introduces one of your absolute best friends in backend architecture, the correlation ID. So the crucial point is that this acts as an essential tracking number for your transaction intent. It gets passed seamlessly across the client, the server, and the relayer calls. Without it, you're flying completely blind across multiple distributed services. But with it, you can accurately trace a single intent's entire complex journey across your distributed systems from start to finish. And this brilliantly illustrates how we use that ID. We can watch the lifecycle event trace unfold in real time. We can watch the intent systematically go from prepared to authorized to built to submitted and finally confirmed or failed on chain. Think about that inevitable heart-sinking moment when a critical transaction fails at 2 a.m. on a Sunday. Instead of a stressful, panic-inducing incident where you're frantically digging through thousands of disconnected server logs trying to match timestamps, having this explicit step-by-step trace turns the outage into a totally solvable, easily diagnosable puzzle. You know exactly which station on the factory floor dropped the ball, reducing your time to resolution from hours to mere minutes. I really want to emphasize this golden architectural principle for you. Place policy enforcement where you can observe and iterate. In the wild, rapidly changing world of Web3, having complete visibility and the ability to safely tweak your systems is far more important than achieving some theoretical textbook perfection on day one. I mean, if you can't see what's happening, you can't fix it when it inevitably breaks. So build for visibility first, construct your layout sensibly, and that perfect architecture will naturally follow as you scale. So, with all these blueprints and interfaces in our toolkit, here is the big question. How does a rigid, concrete protocol like ERC4337 actually map onto these patterns? Does it act as the ultimate blueprint, or is it going to introduce an entirely new set of bottlenecks for your factory assembly line? Well, that is exactly what we are going to uncover in our next explainer. Thank you so much for hanging out and learning with me today. Remember to head over to forge.college to dive deeper into this subject, check out some of the coding modules, and keep building your Web3 expertise. I'll catch you next time.